Welcome to Exploring with D-Rob. Let's go. Good morning. Welcome back. Up in the red today. Today we're going to talk about arch hunting. This morning, headed out to an area where I don't have anything pinned on the map. Let's see if I can find a couple undocumented arches. So I guess today you could say we're exploring with D-Rob. I guess before we go arch hunting, we should know before we go what we're looking for. What is a natural arch? From the Natural Arch and Bridge Society, a natural arch is a rock exposure that has a hole completely through it formed by the natural, selective removal of rock, leaving a relatively intact frame. Two common words you'll hear used is a window and an arch. Well, what's the difference? Technically, they're both natural arches because they're formed the same ways, but a window by size is it has a light opening of 1 to 3 feet, and an arch is 3 feet or larger. Along with a window and an arch, something else you'll probably hear pretty regular is a natural bridge. Well, what's the difference in a natural bridge? There's actually a few different things that can classify as a natural bridge. It either has a current of water flowing through the opening. A current of water was clearly a major agent in its formation. It is or has been used by man as a bridge supporting a portion of a road, or it has the general appearance of a man-made bridge being flat with a level top over an arch opening. A good example of the latter there would be natural bridge. We'll go ahead and get back to today's adventure now, but stay tuned until after the adventure. We'll go into some of the subtitles of different types of arches and things for those who like to be a little nerdy. I am an arch hunter. Just remember that I'm that, not a geologist, so there'll be a lot of layman's terms used today. I may be a jack of all trades, but I'm the master of none. Not sure if you've noticed it up to this point, just me talking and stuff, but as you can see at the sun behind me, a lot of steam rolling off. I'm getting hot, but it is very cold out this morning. As you can see here in the valley, a little frost-kissed valley behind us there. It's a good morning out in the gorge. Well, after an hour of hiking, finally got to where I'm going to try to get off trail at. So now I just got to find me a way below the cliff line. When off trailing, it's important to use a good app such as Gaia, G-A-I-A. It's good for recording your track, your pins. That way you can kind of keep track of areas you've been and kind of gives you a layout of the area you're in. I also recommend checking out a LiDAR map. That's what's being shown right now. It Helps you get a little idea of the contour of the lay of the land. Helps in getting below the cliff lines and things. So be sure to check a LiDAR map out as well once you're ready to get out there. Good reminder, off-trailing and arch hunting ain't necessarily for everybody, because what you get into is going through stuff like this just to get way over there. Not for everybody. Some people may think it's dumb, but people who like to hunt arches like to go after the arches. I've mentioned Gaia several times before. There's several other good apps out there. Gaia is just one that I highly recommend. Good for keeping track of your pins, your tracks, route you take while you're out there in the field. It's also good, especially for recording your track. In the event that you were to get lost, you can always go back, look at your track, backtrack to somewhere where you know where you're at. Even when you're arch hunting, when you're not finding arches, you still run across some really cool geology. Still no arch yet, but check out the color in this sandstone. Some awesome geology as well. Another section of cliff line here with awesome color and geology. And I think we might have found something over here. Gonna have to get closer to investigate. May just be a window, but it's got some really nice arch shape to it. Well, it looked good from afar, but unfortunately, the light opening is less than 3 feet. Right at a foot, so technically this is a window. Not seeing any arch openings right offhand, but this is a really nice rock shelter here. While it likely ain't going to be in my lifetime, this could eventually become a substantial arch, as there is definite separation between the back of the wall and the front of the shelter. Maybe one day. Here's a look out from the back of the shelter. Really nice large rock shelter. Also, no human tracks here. Only tracks I've seen look to be either squirrel or raccoon. Not sure what it is, but it's the second pile of feathers I found, so something's eating birds for lunch regularly. Anyway, I was hoping I'd found my first arch for the day, but I think this one's still just shy of 3 feet. This here should definitely be called the Red Wall. Getting back around to somewhere I've been now. Didn't find any arches like I'd hoped. But this is a neat little area here with some big boulders that's broke away and came down the hill at some point over the years. As I mentioned a minute ago, this is an area I've been in before. We come around to this nice large shelter here. I'm gonna work my way over to the other side here. There's actually an arch over there. Go over there and check it out. Better look at the arch I just mentioned. This is Rock Garden Arch. Really nice big rock shelter here. It's nice red color as well. Unfortunately, again, not the desired geology, but a lot of nice color and other geological features aside from an arch opening. Another pretty nice sized rock shelter, barely out of sight of rough trail. And this one does have a hole here, but I believe this one's just going to be a window as well. Well, after miles of thrashing, a lot of hill, a lot of roto whacking, I think I finally come across a pretty decent find. Let's check it out. I found several arches up here in the gorge. This is probably one of the better finds here. It's always a lot more motivating when you find something like that, even if it is 4 hours into the day. It's always nice too whenever you come around the corner from a find, see another nice dark area. Looks like a big rock shelter nearby. Let's hope for more luck. Well, I got pretty excited about that other arch over there because that was a nice find. This is probably my nicest Red River Gorge find here though. There's one opening. Got a span in the front of the shelter. Got light showing through here on this side. There's a look at the front of the shelter. You can see the span arch right, if I can point it here, right here. And then over to the right here, another opening. It's a pretty sweet find right here. way around above the arch. Here's one of those light openings I could see from below it. I'll look down into the arch from the other side. So it looks like we got a total of 3 arches here. You got the main body of the arch. There's going to be one, as there's full separation across the back here. The span arch across the front is going to be number 2. And then here is number 3 just off the side. Finally back up on trail for some easy walking now. Found a couple nice arches after all. Today started out slow. Thought it was going to be a bust, but came away with some of my best finds on the Red River Gorge today. As you can see, the sun's out, blazing down now. It's probably only 40 degrees, but I'm still burning up. I'll try to run through these pretty quick, as some of these definitions are a little long. They're how the Natural Arch and Bridge Society, or NABS, describes or defines each type of arch. I'll also pop up a quick shot of some arches that are an example of these at the end. First off, we have a waterfall arch. An example of this would be Rock Bridge Arch. This type of natural arch occurs when subterranean stream piracy undercuts and eventually isolates a portion of rock stream bed, leaving a lintel supported by what was and may still be the 2 banks of the stream. This can happen at the lip of a waterfall when cracks and joints permit the water to shorten its course through the rock under the lip. It can also happen for long stretches of rock stream bed where no waterfall is apparent. The shapes of the lintel and opening vary greatly depending on the type of rock, depositional mode of the rock, and stream characteristics. Therefore, the specific morphology of this type of natural arch is not usually helpful in its classification. Subterranean stream piracy must be deduced from contextual attributes. The waterfall natural bridge is the only type of natural arch where flowing water is the primary cause of formation. Here's a shot of Rock Bridge Arch. Next type of arch we have is a shelter arch. Star Gap Arch is a good example of this type of arch. This type of natural arch always occurs on a ridgetop and is usually the result of a cavity merger. In this case, the 2 cavities are shallow, arched recesses, often called rock shelters, that have formed on opposite sides of a narrow extent of a ridgetop. Differential erosion deepens the cavities. These eventually join to create a cylindrical opening under an arched lintel. Frequently, the floor of the opening is flat, but is not always the case. Compression strengthening then acts to resist subsequent erosion. Consequently, this type of natural arch is long-lived and very common. Here's a couple shots of Star Gap Arch. The next type of arch we have here is a pillar arch. This is the most common arch you're going to see. A good example of this is Hidden Arch over near Coomer Ridge. This type of natural arch is the result of cavity merger. In this case, the cavities involved are two adjacent caves or recesses whose backs have joined, leaving a remnant partition separating the mouths of the caves. This partition is the lintel, thus the lintel of a pillar natural arch is always vertical. Miniature and minor pillar arches are very common. They are frequently found in clusters. This striking configuration happens when several adjacent recesses reach a vertical joint that is close to and parallel with the cliff face. Preferential erosion along the joint joins the backs of the recesses, creating a series of pillar natural arches that comes close to resembling a latticework. Significant pillar natural arches are much rarer. Most are solitary, but a few examples of clusters do exist. Hidden arch is a good example of a significant pillar arch. Here's a few shots of hidden arch. Next type of arch we got is a fin arch. These are a little less common compared to some of the other arches, but a good example of this one is tall arch. This type of natural arch is the result of erosion acting on a thin fin or wall of rock. The fin of rock can be created through any number of different processes. How the fin formed is not relevant to classify a fin natural arch. The important distinction is that the wall collapse did not cause the opening. Rather, the opening was caused by any combination of weathering, differential erosion, exfoliation, or bedding plane expansion. As a result, the opening is either an upright oval or upright slotted aperture. It is not a semicircle aperture. Indeed, the opening is almost always elevated. The lintel is usually, but not always, massive. Many of the natural arches that have been labeled as natural windows fall into this category. Here's a few shots of tall arch. This next type of arch usually tends to be a pretty cool arch in my opinion. These are cave arches. A good example of this one here would be cloud splitter arch. This type of natural arch results when roof collapse occurs over a cave. When roof collapse happens in a cave, it is common for multiple sections to collapse, creating multiple entrances and lintels. Very complex morphologies can result. In the simplest of cases, however, there is only one entrance through the roof, and hence one lintel and one opening. This is an upright L-shaped opening with the upper horizontal entrance in the cave roof and the lower vertical entrance of the mouth of the cave. The lintel is usually much wider than it is thick, but this is not always the case. The lintel also tends to be flat, but again, this is not always true. Here's a few shots of cloud splitter arch. The next type of arch we have is the buttress arch. A good example of this would be Gray's arch. This type of natural arch always occurs at the end of a wall or vertical slab of rock. The wall can be an isolated fin or dike, or it can be a projection of rock from the face of a cliff. Such projections frequently form between the heads of adjacent erosion valleys. Different erosion and other mechanisms can also cause such projections to form. Regardless of how the wall was formed, this type of arch can always be described with the word projecting. Here's a few shots of Gray's arch. The last type of arch we have here is another one of the most common you'll find, especially in Red River Gorge. That is the alcove arch. A good example of this type of arch is Silver Mine Arch. This type of natural arch occurs on or next to the vertical face of a cliff. It can only form where a vertical joint has previously formed behind and parallel to the cliff face. It is very common for stress relief exfoliation at a cliff face to result in the formation of this type of joint. Consequently, the alcove natural arch is also quite common. Its observable attributes vary somewhat depending on where it is in its life cycle. If the cliff has retreated to an extent that the opening is no longer occluded, the natural arch can no longer be classified as an alcove type, or any other genetic type. The evidence of formation has disappeared. Very old alcove arches may evolve into abandoned or arc type natural arches, or of course, they could collapse. Here's a few shots of Silver Mine Arch. Hopefully some of that information there will be beneficial to you. Maybe you learn a little something that you didn't know already about arches. I'll put a few links in the description of the video. kyarches.com for a lot of information on Kentucky arches. Highly recommend getting the DVDs pictured here. Arches of the Red River Gorge, volumes 1 through 10. Bill Patrick's spent over 20 years visiting and documenting arches in the gorge. If you visit Red River Gorge very often, these are a very good tool to have. But let's head back out on trail where I'll wrap up today's video. It's a little afternoon already, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap the video up here and try to make good time on back out of here. Got to work tonight, so I may do some voiceovers, talk a little more about different types of arches and things. If I do decide to do that, you've probably already seen it in the video. If not, I'll do another arch video sometime and talk more about the different types of arches and stuff. But I hope you enjoyed today's adventure. Got to see a couple of my new finds up here in the gorge. I'm going to run these by Bill Patrick, make sure these haven't been discovered yet, but there was no sign of people with either one of them, so hopefully they're new finds. If you would, give me a like. If you enjoy my channel, consider subscribing. Try to get out pretty regular up here in the gorge a lot if you like the Red River Gorge. But I hope to see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching.